Bill Hader is fantastic in Barry's title role, but he isn't the show's only character who belongs in the upper echelon. Although he's obviously one of the best and most important parts of the story, it would be unfair to the other members of the Barry cast to so easily place Hader at the top of the list of the project's most enthralling stars. It's close, but several contenders arguably deserve that crown. Of course, not everyone survives Barry's ending, but that doesn't remove them from contention. If anything, it immortalizes them even further. Barry fits comfortably into the category of shows like Dexter, where the main character isn't a conventionally likable person, but the audience still roots for him. I strongly feel that Barry Berkman is one of the best anti-heroes in TV history, and his show is surprisingly underrated and far less known than it should be. Many, but not all, Barry characters become very different people after crossing paths with Hader's persona, although it could be argued that the darkness within them was always there and simply brought out by Barry's actions. Either way, it makes them more compelling. 7. Cristobal Cifuentes. Played by Michael Irby. Cristobal first appeared toward the end of Barry Season 1 and stayed part of the main cast for the majority of the show's remaining run. He perfectly encapsulated the show's blended themes of darkness and comedy. Despite being the head of the Bolivian crime gang in Los Angeles, he was incredibly personable, and everyone who moved in the same circles as him liked him a lot. It was a refreshing take on this type of character, and it led to some interactions that were hilarious and others that were heartbreaking. Although Irby played one of the best Barry characters, there are several others who rank above Cristobal. His arc started strong, but he eventually became defined almost entirely by his relationship with NoHo Hank, Anthony Carrigan. That said, Irby's exit from the show was one of Barry's most memorable moments, although it once more came back to being part of Hank's story rather than Cristobal's. I'm not saying his arc could really have gone any other way, but Cristobal was doomed by his restrictive storylines. 6. Sally Reed. Played by Sarah Goldberg. Sally is one of Barry's central figures throughout the show. She enters the fray as part of the story's original premise, when Bill Hader's title character is trying to simultaneously straddle the world of acting while also trying to wean himself away from his life as a hitman. Quickly becoming Barry's primary love interest, it becomes clear that there is more to Sally than what lurks beneath her welcoming and ambitious demeanor. Sally is one of Barry's best examples of an intentionally divisive character. Her history as a domestic abuse survivor sets her up as someone to root for, but her knee-jerk reactions to feeling even the slightest amount of professional jealousy make her deeply unlikable at times. Then again, that is sort of the point. Goldberg plays both sides of Sally Reed perfectly, and keeps the audience on its toes when it comes to the subject of whether she's acting reasonably or flying off the handle without due cause. 5. Jim Moss. Played by Robert Wisdom. Robert Wisdom as Jim Moss in Barry. Jim joins the Barry cast very late, debuting toward the end of the penultimate season. Unlike many other characters in the show, Wisdom's character lacks any of the whimsy that is so present in Barry's other roles. He's a straight-down-the-line kind of guy who wants nothing but justice or revenge for the death of his daughter, Paula Newsome's Janice Moss. Viewers expecting any kind of levity from Jim during his scenes will be sorely disappointed. He's a one-note character in the best kind of way, and it makes him incredibly intimidating despite Wisdom's limited Barry appearances when compared to his co-stars. He manages to make an immediate impact that's impossible to sweep aside. After other parties have tried and failed to find Janice's killer, Jim uses no-nonsense techniques to get to the bottom of things and isn't drawn in by the social conventions and legal boundaries that have prevented others from getting the results he seeks. Jim was what was required to wrap up what could have been an endless story, and his unapologetic swiftness was a breath of fresh air. 4. Monroe Fushes. Played by Stephen Root. Fushes is the only character in Barry who is truly cut from the same cloth as Bill Hader's titular anti-hero. Although the two have a fractious relationship throughout, the fact that they keep finding new ways to forgive each other proves just how similar they are. That being said, it's Fush's fickleness that often sets him apart. His fragile ego is pretty much always what leads to his willingness to betray Barry after they fight, but all it ever seems to take is the smallest of apologies from Hader's character for Fushes to align himself with his surrogate son again. Fushes has the strongest connection to Barry of everyone, as they go back a long time. While he shines during his scenes with Hader's character, it's when Fushes goes rogue that he really comes into his own as one of Barry's best villains. In a show where pretty much everyone can be viewed as a bad guy, that is quite an achievement. He's also one of Barry's funniest characters, which is a difficult line to tread. I'm ecstatic that Fushes ends Barry as an ally to Hader's character, as it could easily have gone the other way. 3. NoHo Hank. Played by Anthony Carrigan. NoHo Hank begins Barry as a character who is pretty much solely a source of comic relief. Beginning near the top of the hierarchy of the otherwise lowly henchmen within his crime syndicate, Hank rises to the top with relative speed and a surprising level of grace. His leadership style is unconventional, but it often seems to get the job done and further his standing at the top of the pyramid. He never loses his tendency to make the audience laugh with his dry delivery and obsessive desire to have Barry like him, which makes his development even more compelling. As Hank becomes a more prominent crime lord in his own right, he transforms into an even more fleshed-out character. By the end of Barry's final season, he is a force to be reckoned with. The fact that he's a very likable character makes this immense growth very rewarding, even if he is still involved in the occasional piece of unsavory business. The show's laughter died when NoHo Hank was killed, which perhaps wasn't surprising given his unique role in the story.